Hi everyone, my name's Christian, and along with Vishal, Gowtham, and Rajat, we'll be presenting why we will never have a good solution to the persistent problem of IT security, going for the motion, and we're Group 2. Today's agenda will start with an introduction of IT security. We'll go on to talk about common vulnerability types, recent security threat examples, talk about some statistics, case studies, compliance issues, and mitigating factors that would all help our stance on why this will never be a problem that will be fixed. Very important keywords I want to bring up in the IT security are network outages, data compromised by hackers, computer viruses, and other incidents that affect our lives in ways that range from inconvenience to life-threatening. As the number of mobile users, digital applications, and data networks increase, so do the opportunities for exploitation and focus on protecting computers, networks, programs, and data from unintended or unauthorized access, change, or destruction. Vulnerability is a weakness which allows an attacker to reduce a system's information assurance through system susceptibility or flaw, attacker's access to the flaw, and attacker's capability to exploit this flaw. Exploitation is the ability for a hacker to enter the system. Social engineering is a psychological attack used by cyber attackers to deceive their victims into taking an action that will place the victim at risk. Enterprise risk management, a comprehensive approach to risk management that engages people, processes, and systems across an organization to improve the quality of decision making for managing risks that may hinder an organization's ability to achieve its objective. And information assurance, the measurement that protects and defends information and information systems by ensuring the availability, integrity, and confidentiality. I want to emphasize that as the volume of financial and other very sensitive data increases over the internet, the potential for harm from network increases very rapidly. Network outages, which are compromised by hackers, is the main problems of this issue. With the growing volume and sophistication of cyber attacks, ongoing attention is required to protect sensitive business and personal information as well as safeguard national security. During a Senate hearing in March 2013, the nation's top intelligence officials warned that cyber attacks and digital spying are the top threat to the nation's security, eclipsing terrorism. Some types of security threats I want to talk about. Viruses and worms, which are malware that inserts malicious code into existing documents or programs and then spread itself by various means. Today, this is by far the most common type of security threat, and over 90% of viruses are spread through attachment on emails through bots. Trojan horse is another malware attack that disguises itself as something innocent, such as a computer game or YouTube search results page. As a result, devastating issues can happen, such as keylogging. Spam, depending on the source site, spam makes up to 70 to 84% of daily emails sent throughout the world. All that spam results in billions of dollars in lost productivity and creates an ever-increasing need for IT resource to filter out this irritating and potentially malicious menace. Phishing, as anyone has ever used PayPal or any financial institution, has probably seen an email titled Urgent Update Account Status. These emails are all attempts by spammers to phish your account. Phishing refers to spam emails designed to trick recipients into clicking on a link to an insecure website. Packet sniffers capture data streams over a network, thus allowing for the capture of sensitive data like username, passwords, and credit card numbers. Maliciously coded websites can take many different forms, from installing Trojan horses to redirecting you to an unencrypted site. Many popular ones include installation of keyloggers, adware spyware reading cookies, drive-by downloads, access as cross-site scripting to utilize web browser flaws for other intentions. Password attacks can include brute force, packet sniffing, IP snooping, or Trojans. Zombie computers and botnets. If you've ever wondered who's sitting around sending all these spam emails, the answer is you, perhaps. According to a New York Times article, estimates that as much as 80% of spam messages are sent out through the computers of ordinary individuals who have no idea that their computers have been converted into zombies. And such attacks, of course, spamming and phishing attacks, but also click fraud and advertising networks, DOS attacks, pump and dump stock schemes.
Hey, thanks, Chris. My name is Rajat, and I'll be talking about the recent security breaches that have happened. The first example that I have is of Target. What had happened in Target in 2013 was that the point of sale system was attacked by a malware across retail locations in the country. Highly sophisticated tools were used to intercept the payment data, and then the stolen data was transferred onto the servers which were controlled by the criminals. How it was done was the malware is usually is of the Trojan variety, but here they had customized and tricked so that the malware could go undetected and stayed there in the POS terminal, and they were able to gather a lot of data. The effect of that was that the criminals were able to download a lot of data, estimated to be around 11 GB in size, and it contained about 110 million records worth of payments and transactions and other personally identifiable data. Anup Ghosh, CEO of Inventia, one of the security companies, said that even if the organization has antivirus installed on endpoints, which they have to in order to comply with PCI regulations, the fact that attackers are utilizing advanced techniques to evade detection means some infections aren't detected right away. PCI standards have to be updated so that it doesn't emphasize on antivirus so heavily. Updating antivirus is reactive and simply will not stay ahead of malware threats that create around 250,000 new malware variants a day. This is a very interesting thing that is happening these days. Third example that I have, and this is the most recent one that happened last week. What happened was the analytics data program of the Democratic National Convention, which has a lot of campaign related data, the voter analysis data, that was attacked, and they were able to access criminals were able to access all of that data. It seems apparently the anti-secrecy organization WikiLeaks released to 20,000 emails. These were actually the same set of attacks which had happened last year at the Democratic National Convention Committee. How it is done is still unclear because the investigations are going on right now. The effect of this is huge. The national security gets compromised in situations such as these. The democratic election process is being interfered, and election outcome, of course, can be affected by these such attacks. A lot of emails were revealed where the exchange between party officials discussing ways to undermine Bernie Sanders, and this kind of leak led to the resignation of the Democratic National Committee's chair. Hackers are able to gain access to entire network, giving them access to emails from strategy memos to opposition research. And these are sensitive data that goes out in the public. The next thing that I'd like to talk about is the Internet of Things, that are the smart devices that we have all around us these days, and the ways Internet of Things is booming. The security concerns within the Internet of Things is also increasing. So some of the areas where IoT security needs to be addressed are network connectivity. IoT devices are always online, and they just need an entry point within one of those devices, and you're able to hack them and control them. Such an example was shown by Charlie Miller and Chris Valsek just last year, where they were able to conduct an experiment where they were able to, through the entertainment system of a Jeep Cherokee, they were able to access the driving and the steering and the brake mechanism of a Jeep Cherokee. They were able to control that car remotely. Another area where security needs to be addressed is updating the firmware. This allows, while the software is being updated, this allows a gateway for people to inject malwares into the system. Such an example was shown in Cisco devices a few years back, where hackers were able to install malicious malwares on the router devices. Another area, the isolation across the network. Now, breaking into one device will allow you to compromise other devices in the sharing network. Another area is we do not bother to change the credentials that allow access to devices. This is a very common practice in home networks and also in corporate networks. They don't change it as often as they should ideally change the passwords, which allows malwares to enter and stay there even when the passwords have been changed. The intrusion still continues. Another security area in IoT is data transfer. Now, in IoT devices, uses non-encrypted protocols. Some of them are outdated, flawed encryption methods while sending over data. But since this is an upcoming area, things are still evolving. The Jeep Cherokee example and the Cisco example tells us that as we evolve further into Internet of Things, auto manufacturers will concurrently need to address cybersecurity issues. This is not just for auto manufacturers, that applies to every industry. And to date, federal government has not been able to provide any sort of guideline, at least in case of auto industry, they have not been able to provide any guidance on best practices, nor has it described any way for companies to produce vehicles or automobiles components which are legal and safe. This kind of change applies to every IoT invention in every other industry, not just in automobiles. So things are evolving, things are changing, and people are finding different ways to attack the systems. Not a lot of security protocols are in place at the moment to evade them, to protect our systems. Now Gautam will continue with the presentation.
Hi everyone, my name is Gowtham. Before we proceed further, I would like to talk about evolution of IT security over the years. It all started in the mid 1980s when computer malware first emerged. It was very different from how things are today. For one thing, many people weren't even sure if computer virus truly existed or it was stuff made of legends. Then in mid 1990s and early 2000s, high-speed internet emerged, which fueled to the rise of cybercrime. It was the birth of botnets. A botnet is a network of hijacked computers, all under the control of malicious hacker, similar to an army under the control of a commander. Organized criminals were now involved, realizing that the internet could be used to steal and rob. This was the time when robbers started thinking, after all, why go to the risk of a real bank robbery if it's easier to break into a bank account from the safety of a computer? Next was the state-sponsored cybercrime. Officials from various countries have pointed to China as the source of an extensive number of cyber attacks involving system exploitation, including attacks on defense contracts and oil and gas providers. China military and civilian hackers seek to steal the blueprints and proprietary manufacturing process of American business. On the military front, defense agencies like Pentagon and National Nuclear Security Administration each report up to 10 million probes a day. Next is ransomware. It's recently popular. It's a type of malicious software designed to block access to a computer system until a sum of money is paid. This statistics clearly shows how ransomware has increased over each quarter in 2014 to 2015. Let's look at some of statistics of IT security attack in the current year with respect to the year before and why we say security issues persistent. This year almost $450 million was spent on cybercrime issues, which is 200% more than last year. Almost 63% professionals in security industry feel more pressure to secure their organization in 2015 than the last year. 2 million attempts were made to steal money via online transaction in this year alone. Many companies rely on third-party vendor for IT security. There are almost 80 to 90 million plus cybersecurity events per year with close to 400 new threats every minute. One of the most affected industry is healthcare. Out of all the breaches, 36% of the breach includes medical records. 78 million patient records were exposed in Anthem and 22 million records at the Office of Personnel Management. These are just like tip of the iceberg. Many companies choose not to report the true number of records exposed. Given the fact, it's possible that 500 million identities might have been exposed. As you could see, every year the numbers are going to increase. Let's look at the compliance and why it is not good enough. The government has developed security standards for each business sector to safeguard the business from the hackers. But compliance remains as a baseline standard for protecting information and should never be confused with the security. Here are two examples why. The recent data breach at Target and Neiman Marcus have once again showed that compliance with payment card industry data security standard is no guarantee against an intrusion. Both of these companies accepted that even though these companies had security measures that exceeded PCI standards, there was a data breach. The main reason is most assessments are done using previously known attack vectors and threats. Companies are not being assessed for their readiness in dealing with the new threats. Before I hand over to Vishal, I just wanted to talk about one of the recent hacks that happened couple of days ago. The famous Pokemon Go CEO Twitter account was hacked, and the hacker team exposed his password, which was just a snow pass. And it's easy to hack a password with just a brute force technique if you're having such a kind of a password. The same hacker group has hacked Sundar Pichai's and Mark Zuckerberg's account a few weeks back. In the recent interview to Forbes, our team, the hacker group, said that no one is safe online. Over to you, Vishal.
Hi, this is Vishal here. Now that we have seen how susceptible IT is towards security risks, let us see how these risks can be mitigated and what are its limitations. So, first, what is risk mitigation? It is defined as taking steps towards adverse effects. So, it is basically everything that we can do to prevent or fight a security breach. It is of four types. First, risk acceptance. That is, a company is readily willing to accept a security breach and has no thoughts of having any defense mechanism to fight it. This is usually a strategy adopted by small startups who are tight on funds and for whom the cost of risk management outweigh the cost of risk itself. Second, risk limitation, which means that companies do take some action to mitigate the risk, however, is also open to accept other risks. It is very common among medium-sized businesses. Third, risk avoidance, which means complete opposition to exposure of a risk whatsoever. It is usually a very expensive option and only adopted by large companies. Finally, risk transference, which means nothing but mitigating the risk by transferring the responsibility of it to a third party vendor. So here risk avoidance becomes the job of the third party vendor for the host company. Hence, we will only focus on risk avoidance strategies and its limitations because others are kind of already open for a security breach to a certain extent. I will talk about the 10 best and most common risk avoidance strategies that companies adopt and one main limitation it possesses in its current state that always leaves it vulnerable. Strategy 1: Security awareness and training. Even though companies provide security training and awareness workshops, it is mostly neglected by employees due to lack of interest or overconfidence. Strategy 2: Antivirus and anti malware protection. Having an antivirus is not just enough. Keeping it updated is. However, it will still remain outdated for new malwares until its signature has been identified and updated. Strategy 3: Data encryption. People generally use weak and easily guessable passwords, and if not, there are various brute forces and reverse engineers for algorithms readily available. 4. Access controls. Accesses once granted are generally not maintained well once the work is done due to pure lack of diligence. Strategy 5: Patching. Companies fail to apply regular patches to its every system and hence it remains outdated for a surprising zero-day attack. Strategy 6: Mobile devices. Security is often breached if the mobile device where the important information was stored is lost or stolen. Strategy 7: Monitoring. Monitoring requires careful baselining of alerts and visualizations at scale. Also, manual monitoring is vulnerable due to human negligence. Strategy 8: Firewalls. Firewalls are aloof to internal attacks and attacks that occur at higher levels in the protocol stack. Strategy 9: Remote backup. Remote backup involves relying on third-party security system, which is again a concern of being exposed to the discussed risks. Strategy 10: Vulnerability assessments and penetration testing. Vulnerable assessment and penetration testing are highly dependent and generally limited usage of tools and automated scanners which come with obvious limitations. Also, VAPTs are restricted to known vulnerabilities only. Now let us talk about a hack on humans which is called as social engineering. Social engineering is an attack that relies heavily on human interaction and often involves tricking people into breaking normal security procedures. Imagine a company has got the most updated technical infrastructure, the best compliant framework in place, expensive tools, the smartest team of security specialists, but just one vulnerable, uneducated employee who gets his company hacked by talking out all the valuable information about the company. World's most famous hacker, Kevin Mitnick, said social engineering bypasses all technologies, including firewalls. There are five most common types of social engineering attacks. First, phishing. It is an attempt to obtain sensitive information such as usernames, passwords, and credit card details often for malicious reasons, by masquerading as a trustworthy entity in an electronic communique. Pretexting. It is a social engineering technique in which a fictional situation is created for the purpose of obtaining personal and sensitive information from an unsuspecting individual. Baiting. Baiting is like the real world Trojan horse that uses physical media and relies on the curiosity or greed of the victim. So, in this attack, if the attacker leaves a malicious infected device in a location sure to be found like bathroom elevator, which gives it a legitimate looking and a curiosity picking label and simply waits for the victim to use the device. Quid pro quo. It's a social engineering tactic that relies on a criminal's ability to tempt victims with a free service or a gift. Tailgating. Tailgating simply means that someone follows you into a restricted area or a system to gain illegitimate access of it. Now, just recently a hacker took advantage of insufficient authentication protocols within the Department of Justice to perform a social engineering attack and leaked information on 20,000 FBI agents. Having said all this, why do we still think there is no perfect solution to the problem of IT security? Information management systems are a complex, target rich environment comprising hardware, software, storage media, peripheral devices, data, and people, and an intruder will use any of the available means to subvert the security of a system, and it is next to impossible to harden all of it to its best. Apparently, humans are more easy to get tricked than computers and even more difficult to safeguard than computers. So, no matter what you do to protect the security of your network, your end users will thwart you anyway. Finally, hackers are always more motivated people than security analysts because it gives them an unprecedented right to intrude into a so called secure system, even if it is with a non malicious intention. I would also like to mention a few notable people and their interesting quotes that support our thought. Finally, computer security is not a solvable problem, it is a people problem. People's problems have been around since people evolved from the lower primates, and they'll be around until we evolve into some other life form. Security has always been an arms race and always will be. The back and forth between an attacker and defender will always remain. And to add to all of it, I would say your ignorance will be their power. Thank you so much for watching this presentation.